Obi Wan Kenobi has started off on a high note with its much grittier look at the Star Wars universe. However, the most fascinating thing about the show so far has been its derivation of elements from the animated shows. In today's video, we're going to take a deeper look at some of these callbacks from the Clone Wars and what they could mean for the show's future episodes. First up, Obi Wan Kenobi's finally bringing the real sauce to live action. Almost 20 years after the release of Revenge of the Sith, most Star Wars fans have finally warmed up to the idea of the prequels. Of course, there was a ton of backlash when they originally came out since these movies were such a massive departure from the OG trilogy. So, what's changed between now and then? Well, for starters, the kids that those movies were aimed at have grown up to be vocal fans on social media. However, perhaps an even more important fact is that in these past 20 years, we've gotten tons of Star Wars content set during and after the prequel era. This has resulted in so much more context to everything in those movies. You see, the truth is that George Lucas was aiming for something that just wasn't possible within 3 movies. Like, seriously, if you could look at the original 4-hour-long Episode 3 script, you'd notice that there was clearly tons of stuff missing in the final cut. And this is exactly why shows like The Clone Wars and games like Jedi Fallen Order are so important for anyone who's diving into Obi Wan Kenobi. Oh, and obviously, with Dave Filoni at the helm of pretty much everything in the galaxy far, far away, you're always going to get those obscure references to the animated show that he created back in the day. So, are we going to see Quinlan Vos in Obi Wan Kenobi? Obi Wan Kenobi's 3rd episode can be summed up as a super long chase scene, as it's just him and Leia trying to run away from the Empire. However, despite its dull premise, it actually turned out to be the best outing for the series so far, especially with that epic Vader versus Obi-Wan fight at the end. And while people may have some reservations about how that duel panned out, you can't say that seeing Vader at his prime wasn't bone-chilling. Other than that encounter, we also got to see some neat little references that only Clone Wars fans would have understood. For instance, as he's setting up to go through the Jedi escape route, Obi-Wan discovers a wall full of messages left by other Jedi fugitives in the safe house. And while most of these are spread out randomly, one message in particular catches the former Jedi Knight's eye. Of course, it's none other than Quinlan Vos, who's a pretty frequent character in the Clone Wars. For those who don't know, Quinlan is the Kifar Jedi Master who's always been an intriguing character in the series. Unlike other virtuous Jedi like Obi-Wan, he's more of a morally gray Force user. And according to Clone Wars canon, that's exactly why he was chosen to go on a convert mission to assassinate Count Dooku. Now, if you followed his story in the novel Dark Disciple, you'd know that his efforts to infiltrate Dooku's inner circle don't go too well. In fact, he kinda ends up being the reason for Asajj Ventress's death, as she sacrifices herself to save him. Apart from this and a few other bits and bobs during the Clone Wars, though, we haven't really explored much of Quinlan Vos's story in Star Wars canon so far. Plus, no one knew about his whereabouts after Order 66 either, so it was kinda refreshing to see Obi-Wan mention him. Also, his involvement in the whole Jedi Railroad escape route is also pretty dope. With that said, it would be interesting to see whether he does actually make an appearance during one of the later episodes in the show. Next, the Battle of Dajim might be a part of canon again. The Clone Wars era of Star Wars is one of the most brutal and fascinating times in the story's timeline. After all, it's a full-on war between the Republic and the Separatists. And even though we've seen much darker things after Order 66, they can't even touch the war in terms of sheer scale. Now in Clone Wars, we've seen tons of super bloody battles that have changed the course of Star Wars history. And much like the infamous Siege of Mandalore, the Battle of Jabim also plays a pivotal role in threading out the path toward the fall of the Jedi Order. For context, Jabim is a mining planet that's got tons of super valuable resources. So obviously, everyone was bound to eventually gun for the control of the planet's operations. Sadly though, the whole thing doesn't go too well for our Jedi friends as Anakin's left stranded on the planet with his squad of clone troopers, after Obi-Wan is captured by Ventress. As a matter of fact, the Battle of Jabim is one of the few instances in the Clone Wars where the Republic actually suffered a massive loss at the hands of the Separatists. With that said, all of this was presumably wiped away from the canon when Disney took control of the Star Wars franchise. But if you're a fan of this arc, then you don't need to fret anymore, as Obi-Wan Kenobi seemingly restored the battle back into the main story. How? Well, when the Jedi Master's getting ready to escape with Leia in Episode 3, Tala tells him that they'd be heading over to Jabim. Of course, they didn't have to name-drop the planet like that, but the fact that they did, especially during such a pivotal moment, means that we might see some action on this mining world at some point later in the show. Time for some other related news. Starting with, Obi-Wan writer reveals origin behind Kumail Nanjiani's character. When the initial trailers for Obi-Wan Kenobi were revealed, people thought that Kumail Nanjiani would be playing another Jedi on the run. But it was all a ruse, as his character Haja turned turns out to be more of a scam artist who's only pretending to be a Jedi. And while he's still got good in his heart as he does help Obi-Wan escape with Leia, his character's just there to provide a bit of comic relief. Now, Haja Estri is an entirely new character to the franchise, and he's not been mentioned in any canon before. And obviously, when it comes to naming these newer characters, there's a very deliberate process as it has to be something meaningful. Well, throw that notion out because according to Obi Wan Kenobi writer Joby Harold, Kumali's character was actually named by his 9-year-old daughter. Speaking to CBR, he explained that he couldn't really come up with something that's playful enough for a con man, but would also sound fine as a Jedi name. So he just kinda asked his daughter for the suggestion and somehow got the perfect name from her. And honestly, it's fitting as well, since the whole point of Haja Estri's character is to pull the fear and cynicism away from the moment, and to discover the kid inside you. And now, Miss Marvel star reveals what it's like working with Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris. Miss Marvel's arrived at Disney Plus to a wave of praise from fans and critics alike. And while everyone's definitely vibing with the show's storyline, the real star of the show is Iman Vellani. The young actress seems to be taking everything in her stride, showing off her deep love for the Marvel Universe, and also sharing some funny behind-the-scenes stories. For instance, the Miss Marvel star revealed earlier that Tom Holland spoiled Spider-Man No Way Home for her by showing her a photo of him and Tobey Maguire together. And now she's also revealed what it's like to be working with established MCU stars Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris. Speaking to Screen Rant, she said that both of them are like her older sisters now, as they really helped her get over that initial bump of anxiety. The 19-year-old also said that they're super protective of her, and that it felt very empowering to be standing next to them in a supersuit. Finally, Pedro Pascal teases relationship dynamics between Jaren and Grogu in Season 3. The Mandalorian is easily one of the most beloved modern Star Wars shows. After all, it's the series that ushered us into this new era of the franchise. Having said that, the best part about The Mandalorian isn't its action or character arcs. It's actually the relationship between Grogu and Din Djarin. Ever since our favorite bounty hunter's discovery of Baby Yoda at the start of Season 1, fans have been head over heels at how their relationship has evolved over time. Of course, it starts off as a bit of a resentful bond, as Mando's forced to bear this new weight on his shoulders. By the end of Season 2, however, the two are pretty much inseparable. And now, at the Star Wars Celebration, the Mandalorian actor Pedro Pascal teased what's next for the pair in Season 3. Speaking to ET during the convention, the actor said that it's gonna turn into more of a codependent relationship in the upcoming season, since Grogu started to discover his powers and now is capable of fighting things on his own. However, he also said it's gonna be super important for Mando to embrace that shift, and make sure that these new powers are harnessed in the right way. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.